Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton Ed. Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful August the 11th, 2020. Ronald Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, it's been 74 days since the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and the rioting, not the rioting, but the protesting and picketing is still going on. We got 85 days left until the presidential election of 2020, so we're about to have an intersection in society.
We are about to have an intersection in society. Today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. You can also follow Big C Sports on Spotify. I really appreciate a lot of things going on in the world. I've been pausing. Big C, I went out for a run this morning, and I ran 3 miles. To be honest, I walked about 1, and I ran 2, but it was still 3, Big C. But I'll never stop walking with this Veterans Crisis Hotline. They are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get some help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, I wish it was as important to the administration that our veterans get some help against the mental illness backdrop that they suffered from after serving in our armed services, Charlton. We lose some 22 veterans a day to suicide, a much horrific number than anyone would ever want to imagine in this country that's supposed to have everything. As we think about the service that they've dedicated to this country, and they come back home and they suffer mentally, physically, and financially, and they can't seem to find an out, Charlton. So many of them have turned to that horrific disease called suicide. Our administration doesn't address the issue of our veterans on a daily basis, Charlton. They think about what can they do for themselves. But our veterans, Charlton, need the help of American society. Anytime somebody can give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is a great service to our former military veterans, Charlton. So as we think about, as we go through our everyday lives and our struggles and our ups and downs, those people have a lot of downs that they can't get around. So if you see somebody struggling mentally, emotionally, don't hesitate in giving them that number, whether they're a veteran or not. That National Suicide Prevention Hotline number saves American lives.
It really does save people with Big C, and that's truly one of the reasons I love to give it out. And anybody can give it out. All you do is have someone call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 and get some help. Also, if you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can make sure that they get some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And they say, hey, kid, when you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships are doing it. Sports teams, they're starting to do it too, except for college football. Big C, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. And you can find out what's going on there. Also, for those of you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can get some help. Big C, I know we love sports. We love the politics. We love everything that makes this country as great as it is. I mean, it's good and bad, just like relationships. They're good and bad. They're not all good, and they're not all bad. But I do want to say before, we talked about something yesterday And I just wanted to touch on it again because it's called pig laws. And this was enacted by some of the southern states. And they were just being very egregious toward black Americans simply for wanting the right to vote, simply for wanting the right to live in a neighborhood that they wanted to live. They wanted to be able to have a job so they could feed their families. In every way they turned, they were met with obstruction. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what I've meant. You know, I keep talking about white society. Why are they constantly trying to oppress black society in America? And you talk about the pig laws that were enacted after Reconstruction in America, Charlton, and even after desegregation, they were enacted again. So as you think about the constant fight of Negroes in America trying to gain equality in this alleged land of the free and home of the brave, it is not. Because whites are constantly trying to oppress in any kind of way. We see it from gerrymandering in the vote. You hear the president talking about the Chinese virus.
Yeah.
You know, using racial epithets in every way they can to stoke this fear that people are coming to take from you what's yours.
Yeah.
No one's coming to take from you what's yours. If you have a job and you're good at that job, nobody's going to take it. You're not an athlete.
Right.
The average person isn't. So as we look at society, how they've constantly oppressed people of color.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been people of color oppressing people of color, Charlton. It's been white society. So those lawmakers that have run this government, when we think we got 97 senators in this country that are white, they're setting the laws of the land, just like they would not pass a bill for Americans to get $600 in unemployment relief during this pandemic.
Yeah.
They said $400 was too much, that they were not worthy of more than $200. You know, to survive. You try to support a family on $200 a week, Charlton, it's ridiculous. But like we talked about yesterday, there is a man in Louisiana serving a life sentence for trying to steal a pair of lawn hedge scissors, you know, to trim the bushes.
Yeah.
Life sentence. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't harm anybody physically. But because the Supreme Court in Louisiana is predominantly white, they said he wouldn't even hear the case. He's spent 20 years in prison already.
Yep.
He's in his early 60s. And you think about equality. You know, here's the president let all of his friends out that were convicted. None of them served a year. Here's a guy who's been in prison for 20 years, and this is just one individual.
Yeah, just
Think
one.
about the dozens and dozens of Negroes that are in prison, Charlton, for even lesser crimes. You're guilty until you're proven innocent. And most of these people, because they come from impoverished situations,
Yeah.
don't have the financial wherewithal to hire a private lawyer, Charlton. And so they end up cutting a deal, and this deal ends up manifesting into more.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing how history tends to repeat itself. And we talked about the pig logs, Big C, and you eloquently explained that. I didn't even know they existed until I did some research, and you and I started talking about it and said, hey, let's talk about this on the show. Also, I heard again today, number one, congratulations, Joe Biden. He's going to be the 46th president of the United States. If people vote, we know Putin has his own ideas of who he wants, and Donald Trump is crooked, so they're doing all the stuff they can, but he knows he's going to lose if decent people vote. That's my belief. But, you know, we talked about black codes, BLACK, CODES. You know, there's a thing called white codes, and I heard it today. You know, black codes sometimes called black laws, were laws governing the conduct of African Americans. I know you guys want to know who won the game and is college football going to kick off. No, there's not. Black people are starting to read. The best known for them, they were passed between 1865 and 1866 by southern states after the Civil War in order to restrict, listen up, Giuliani, to restrict African Americans' freedom and to compel them to work for low wages, like the stop and frisk that Trump and Giuliani had going on. Well, I want to jump to today, Kamala Harris, former California Attorney General, and I realize there are white codes, Big C, because POTUS used a lot of them today. He referred to one senator, I believe, as Pocahontas. He also referred to Kamala Harris as what they've always said about black women, called her mean. She was nasty. You know, she's mean and nasty, and she was mean to a bigot, one of his friends. And isn't that what we've always heard with the pig laws and the black codes? Here's a woman who's going to be the next vice president of the United States, and we have a current man in office for the next couple of months, and he's saying that the next vice president is mean and nasty. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this has been Donald Trump's way of identifying intelligent, strong black women. If you look at the women of the press corps in Washington that are of dark color, Charlton,
Yeah.
he's always responded to them as mean and nasty.
Yeah.
So when you think about white men constantly calling intelligent black women mean and nasty because they can ask a relevant question
Yeah.
that challenges you, that you don't have the salience enough to be able to answer, it makes you mean and nasty because you don't kowtow to this individual. But this should let all women understand, if you're intelligent, this is what this guy thinks of you, that
Yeah.
you're mean and nasty because you don't sit there and circumvent what he's saying.
Yep.
You don't sit there and allow him to mentally or physically abuse you. That makes you mean and nasty. And I think the women of our country, Charlton, have come a lot further than that, regardless of the culture that you are, is that you have to look at Kamala Harris and what the president is saying about her and what he will continue to say about her
Yeah.
on a daily basis. If anybody's ever mean and nasty, evidently this fool doesn't have a mirror wherever he lives when
No.
he's talking about mean and nasty.
Yeah.
Because he would be scared every time he walked in front of a mirror, because I know he doesn't do his own hair.
No, he
somebody
doesn't.
else is doing it. You can't see all that wig wrapped around your head.
Yeah.
But, you know, mean and nasty, when you're describing the women of America
Yeah.
as being mean and nasty, that lets you know how much of a racist and bigot you are as a man in America.
And you white ladies, he said he's going to grab your daughters by the PUSS bloppity blop blop, and you still voted for him. So now I guess he's going to try to grab Kamala Harris by the PUS bloppity blop blop, but she won't put up with that garbage, and no woman should. I want to ask every American to register to vote. Just register to vote. It's text 26797. Just text 26797. Just text the word vote, 26797. Tell all your friends. Tell them Big C in the NFL said vote now. And let's make this the biggest vote in the United States in the history of the universe. We got to do that. All we got to do is vote. But I want to just say, I know some people care about sports, and we do it all. It's like a gumbo. You got everything, Big C. You just got to move that spoon around. But the reason in voting is so important. And when people say Black Lives Matter, and POTUS said Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group, and he already tried to be act like a terrorist to Kamala Harris, a former California Attorney General. Isn't that something? He's acting like she's a terrorist and says she's mean and nasty because some white people are bigots and they're not used to being put in check the way Big C Sports does or Kamala Harris does. So Big C Sports, we want to be sexy. We want to be the coolest, most thoughtful sports show. We want to be clever. We want to be engaging. We want to be provocative, Big C. We want to be real sports talk. If it feels good and you want some more, just Google it. And that's what we ask everybody to do. But I want to just say, number one, it's so important to me. I spend a lot of time with my mother in the past, 2 weeks, Big C. And, man, when I see how strong my mother is, how intelligent, how beautiful she is, I know she had to put up with a lot of garbage by people like Trump. And I had a very frank conversation with her because she grew up in the South and came out to the West because they were tired of the bigotry and the Confederate flags that POTUS says he will defend until he dies. And I asked my mother, I said, Mom, how did you deal with the racism and the bigotry and the sexism as a black woman? And her words were, baby, I did what I had to do. I prayed, asked God for favor, and I just did what I had to do to take care of my family. But she shouldn't have had to work any harder than Trump's dirty old butt. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that was a sign of the times at that time when your mother was living in the South, but it's still a sign of the times here in 2020 when you think about it. As black people in America, you got to do what you have to do to survive. When we think about the 74 days of protest since the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, this protest was led by black people, Charlton.
It was.
We just lost the late Senator John Lewis, the Congressman John Lewis.
Yep.
He did what he had to do to survive throughout his lifetime, Charlton, his 80 years on this earth. As we think about black people still struggling 400 years after arriving on this continent, and we should not have to go through the bigotry and the denigration that we're still dealing with here in 2020. Regardless of your position in society as a black person, Charlton, you're always thought about less than a person of white complexion, Charlton. You always have to do twice as much more to be able to achieve, regardless of how high you have ascended. And when you think about white people in America, Charlton, they can do the most dastardly things there are in society and still come out smelling like a rose, get their slate white clean because they look like mainstream, Charlton. Nothing's held against them. Because if we have a president of the United States with the background of criminality that he has represented throughout his lifetime,
oh my
and
goodness,
still today in the Oval Office doing the same thing, and that's acceptable by white society, we still have decades and decades to go as people of color.
Yeah, and so what I love about what we do on the show, I love paying homage to my mother and my father and my grandparents. And when Big C Sports is talking about anything, we don't always agree on everything, and that's great. But to understand that my mother, she lived under the pig laws, and she lived under the black codes that these old colonialist white men, they enacted in Congress to make life more difficult on a beautiful black woman. And she never broke the law. All she did was work her butt off to raise a family. And she still had to go to restrooms that said colored and white, drinking fountains that said colored and white. They couldn't rent hotels where they wanted to. They had a hard time just doing basic things and having their dignity. And I said, so Mom, let me ask you then, how have you gone through all of that garbage by white people, and yet you raised me and my brothers and sisters to still treat people the way you want to be treated? Because you got to give people the benefit of the doubt and treat them the way they want, the way you want to be treated, not based on their color. Now, if someone like that can do that, and you have POTUS taking on the first black woman in the history of the United States of America that would become the vice president, and he already started attacking her, said she's going to want to take away your guns. I ask every black American, please read the Second Amendment and go buy a gun. I want every black American to buy guns because POTUS wants you to buy them also. They want every black American to be armed. Listen when he says the Second Amendment. He also, and I want to throw it to you, Big C, he said, this is the guy that caused the birther movement, that said the first black man that was the president of the United States was not an American. The birther movement with President Barack Obama. Well, he attacked Kamala Harris as being too liberal, and she's going to raise your taxes, and she's going to be mean. Haven't they always called black women mean? My mother wasn't mean. She just had to defend herself, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you can't articulate how to represent a person, then you go to denigrating stances. And that's what Donald Trump has done ever since we've seen him in the political spotlight, is that he's been denigrating towards people of intelligence. He wants people to come down and play handball against the curb with him, because he plays your handball against the curb with a snake. So
Yep.
You know how low that he is.
Yeah.
So he's trying to get people to play down and wallow in the mud that he is. But he has not found anybody who's willing to take that bait other than his constituents, Charlton, the people that are in his base. They understand how to play handball against the curb. And so they're as low as he is. Because when you come out and you attack American citizens, but yet you won't attack Vladimir Putin for meddling in our country, Charlton,
yeah.
that lets you know where he stands against American society. So all those people who think that he's for them, just like with these executive orders that he signed at his golf club, that none of them mean anything. He didn't tell people this payroll tax thing that you'll have to pay it back at the end of the year. So whatever they take out of your paycheck, you're going to have to pay it back come income tax time. He didn't tell people that this alleged unemployment extension that he has,
right,
the money would come from Medicare as well as Social Security. So he's going to be depleting those funds. So you let the buyer beware. When you listen to a fool, you know, this is what you end up getting fooled.
Getting fooled. Also, Kamala Harris, she wants to do what POTUS won't do. He refuses to do it. Now he made destroying the federal statues a crime, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. But he will not make lynching a federal crime. She marched beside.
Well, he won't even make hate crime a federal crime.
He won't do it.
You think about that. You got a president that will not declare a hate crime a federal crime, Charlton. It should be unilateral across the nation. He's talking about he's done more for black people than anybody else. They make federal hate crimes a statute in America, Charlton. That's what you do.
Yeah, I'm really proud, because when I see Kamala Harris, and just talking to my mother about that today, And white women did not have to go into a drinking fountain that was dirty. They didn't have to be told, go to the back of the bus when you want to sit down. They weren't told to go around by the bathroom when you want to come sit at a restaurant. They sit them right by the toilet so they can smell all the stink, Big C. They didn't do that to white women. They didn't tell white women that your children are going to be profiled by the criminal justice system to get more white kids locked up in federal penitentiaries. Judges didn't do that to white people. They didn't force them to not live where they wanted to live. They didn't tell them you had to beg for work. And when you were hired, your last hired first fired for menial wages. And to see that black women have been able to go through all that garbage, Big C, and still rise, I'm really, really appreciate it. I want to also just mention one thing before we touch on sports, but this is more important. Hey, did you see LeBron James? He had a great game the other day, Big C. No, that's second place in my opinion. United States of America, I believe it's going to see record number of powerful black women running for U.S. Congress. Since 1619, Big C. Remember, we started the show talking about the pig laws and the black codes. And all of that was to oppress black Americans. That came from white people. So when Rudy Giuliani talks about Black Lives Matter being a terrorist group, he needs to read the pig laws. And in fact, you need to read the pig laws, whoever you are, if you're standing with that garbage. And whenever you saw the word black, just replace it with white and see if you're justifiable with that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, it comes from the administration as they talk about people.
Yeah.
Rudy Giuliani is just doing lip service for the president. Charlton, whatever he says, he's been told that by the president to go out and reiterate, Charlton.
Yeah.
But the president has also said that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group. Here's a guy that would not fight for any life in America who got 5 deferments from Vietnam for telling a lie.
Yep.
He had chin splints, but he can play golf every weekend.
All the time.
Since he's been in the White House, so there's nothing wrong with his legs now in his 70s. So as you look at a guy who's built his life and career on lies, Charlton, on lies.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, when you elect a reality TV person, Charlton, that what he does on TV is not even real,
yeah,
who has been bankrupt more than anybody else, who won't turn over his taxes, who's lived and built his life off of lies and deception. This is what you get as a country.
Yeah.
And this is where we are as America.
Yeah, we are. At least 122 black or multiracial women have filed to run for congressional seats in this year's election alone, Big C. The figure has increased steadily since 2012. It was only 48 at the time. So I know people think we just want to shut up and dribble, just play basketball, play sports for us so we can make a lot of money. But a lot of people, and I'm really proud of my mother, I'm really proud of black women, because for the most part, everybody has always tried to belittle black women. It's a shame, but we know it's true, and I'm just glad that God is turning things around, and I appreciate it. Big C, I want to talk a little bit about college football, but before I do, I want to get you to close out. Is there anything that you understand that you would like to just reiterate? Because as a man that has a black mother, black daughter, we understand that we got to protect them. We got to protect them physically, but also mentally what they get thrown at them. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is something I've constantly told you, and you and I have gotten a heated debate on it on the show. When I say white people, and you say not all white people, well, the white people that are not bad, they understand what I'm saying. The thing is that still today, after 400 years in this country, we still have to fight against white people, the battle to try to ascend up above where we are.
Yeah.
It's not that we're less intelligent. It's not that we're less valuable, Charlton. But we constantly have to fight for our position on the podium every day. When you think about people of color in America, why does white society feel that you have to continue to oppress people of color? Not just black, Hispanic, Asian, East Indian, Charlton.
Yeah.
All nationalities that are not white, they feel that they have to oppress them. Why? What are you so fearful of? You're fearful of competition? Equal competition creates a better world for everybody, Charlton.
Yeah.
But when you oppress people, you don't grow to your full potential either.
Yeah, that's true. Shirley Chisholm, she won the election, the 91st Congress, 1969 and 1971, and she was, she became the first African American congresswoman. Big C. We're talking 69, and she ran for president in 1972, but they snowballed her. Big C. They railroaded her. She faced a lot of xenophobia and bigotry from white people, same people that go to church and pray to Jesus. And I just hope that doesn't happen again to Kamala Harris. I know even women didn't support Hillary Clinton. They'd rather have an old white man that grabs them by the P-U-S, bloppity-blop-blop, and their daughters. And that's why we had that garbage in the White House for a couple of more months. I want to touch on some things that happen in the world of sports. And again, I applaud you. I'm going to stop drinking as much red wine and get some of that homemade Southern moonshine that you good old boys, I guess you brew it up down south, Big C, because a lot of these have been talking about a little bit clairvoyant. College football, President Trump calls his play, saying that canceling the 2020 college football season would be a tragic mistake for his campaign. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it would, because, all of what he's been advocating for to get the people back out on the field, get them playing, get the fans in the stand, he would be able to go out and say that COVID-19 is not as bad as people have been saying. See, it's safe for all these athletes to go out there. They're young, they're strong. It shouldn't kill too many of them, is basically what he's saying. And,
wow.
Whoever dies sitting up in the stands, that's just an attrition thing.
Yeah.
But, where we're sitting right now, Charlton, with college football, it is a much appreciated thing. I am glad that the Big Ten and the Pac-12 decided to cancel the season. And it's going to be followed by the other three. I said yesterday, within 48 to 72 hours, that college football would come to its senses and cancel the season.
Yeah.
Because the health and welfare of these individuals. And a lot of people think that it's about the coaches. No, Charlton, the coaches, they might be the highest paid person on campus.
Yeah.
But it comes down to the presidents and the deans of the university. The liability lies upon them. They're the ones in control. They're the ultimate decision makers on the campus. So when people think that the coaches have a hand in the season being canceled, no, because you've heard many coaches come out and say, we want to play. We think we can get through this. We need to get out on the field, because you got millions of dollars in contract revenue that the coach is looking at.
Yeah.
That's the reason why he wants to get out there and play. He doesn't want to take another pay cut when it comes down to that. But I am glad, and I side with these presidents and deans, Charlton, in the Big Ten and Pac-12. And we also know that the players in the Pac-12 demanded 50% of the revenue to play. So I know that was a huge decision from the Pac-12, the reason why they canceled it.
Yeah. I've always said, and I believe in the Second Amendment. I grew up with guns. It was my mother and her ability to have guns on hand that prevented white people from harming my family. So President throws that thing out there, believe in the Second Amendment, but they're afraid of black people to have guns. That's one of the reasons my family wasn't harmed, because we grew up with guns. And anyone trying to act up, they can see the barrel of the shotgun, and it changes the way people think about you. College football, Big C, the Big Ten Conference, and we've talked about the Pac-12, decided to suspend football for the 2020 season, becoming the first Power 5 conference to do so. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it was inevitable, and both of those teams made that decision late last night, early this morning, to pull the plug on their conferences, the Big Ten and the Pac-12.
Yeah.
You talked about yesterday that there were several Big Ten players that had a heart condition that was related to COVID-19.
Yeah.
Now, that's the last thing that a commissioner or president of a university or conference wants to see, is that you have one of those young men that the president keeps touting. They are so strong, and it shouldn't affect them the way it affects everybody else. Fall dead out on the field, Charlton, from a heart condition. There's no way that you could explain that. There's no way that you could give enough money in a lawsuit, because it's going to be a class action suit of negligence and basically manslaughter that would all come along with that, Charlton, because you knew of the health risks that these young men face by going out there. And I think that's becoming a unilateral thing. And you and I have had debates about it back and forth.
Yeah.
You keep talking about people live. I say they don't recover, though.
Yeah.
It's the difference between living and recovering. It's like being in an auto accident. Yes, you recover from the auto accident, but you can't walk any longer. So you're alive, but you're not the person that you once were.
Yeah.
And this is what athletes and everybody else with COVID-19 face, Charlton. You may survive, but you're not the individual of capacity that you once were. Physically, we know that. And there's going to be some mental things that come along from this COVID-19 also, because the brain is an organ of the body also.
Yep.
So, I applaud these universities for making these moves, starting with the MAC conference first, Charlton, last Tuesday, when they canceled the season, and now we've been followed by two Power 5 conferences.
Yeah, they've been starting to read Big C. Before we get up on the Big C pause that everybody's talking about pausing it right now, they won't give Big C Sports credit. They just take it and plagiarize it. But I want to say everybody wants to feel sexy and everybody wants to feel significant. We want to be the coolest, most thoughtful show. We want to be clever. We want to be engaging. We want to be provocative. We want to be real sports talk. If it feels good and you want some more of it, just Google it. We're going to take the Big C pause. We'll be right back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many applications. Spotify, also some talk about there's so many satellites that are out there, but XM satellite, hopefully having the conversation soon to get Big C Sports on XM satellite, so everyone who buys a new car can just pull up our show in so many different applications. I want to talk to you about something, because we started talking about pig laws and black codes. And I realized, in talking to my mother, she lived in that. It's one thing to talk about something that happens to somebody, or we read something about history, and everybody says, "Oh yeah, well, I never owned slaves, so why would I have to pay reparations?" The country didn't ask permission when they gave the Marshall Plan to rebuild Germany and Europe. And Lloyd's of London, they didn't ask black people's permission when they gave money to insure the slave ships that brought Africans from the African continent to the United States and all in South America. They didn't have to ask permission. The governments did it, Big C. The NCAA, think about it. If college sports might be allowed to provide their athletes with a more educated benefits, including equipment, travel opportunities. This is the big word, cash, like CASH, cash, more money, incentives. As soon as this week, it's amazing that black sports and athletes, men and women, Big C Sports, big proponent of that. You got to ask for something or people keep stealing it from you, Big C. The U.S. Supreme Court, they denied today an NCAA request, the people who say they love your kids, to pause a ruling in the lower court that opens the door for athletes to receive expanded benefits. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is something we've been discussing continuously, that black athletes, this is the most power that they will ever have in their athletic life right now, because this pandemic has showed the discretion of how they've been abused financially and emotionally over all these decades and participating since desegregation in these major white universities, Charlton, that they've just been free labor.
Yeah.
They basically operated under the pig law, where they've had no options other than just abide by what was put in front of them. Otherwise, they were threatened that the scholarship would be taken away.
Yeah.
But now that the Supreme Court upheld the ruling of the lower court, allowing that players can make money beyond just their scholarship, Charlton, that they can be compensated financially, this will happen immediately.
Yeah.
You think about when the next college football season starts and players say, "Oh, wait a minute, I should get this amount of money. You're using my name and likeness on all your advertising for the university. I'm getting a cut of that because you're charging X amount of dollars for sponsorship from these boosters or advertisers, Charlton. I'm getting my cut." And they'll start hiring lawyers to handle this. And I think by this law being enacted by the lower court and the Supreme Court upholding it, it's going to allow players to hire representation while they're in college, Charlton, where they won't lose their eligibility. I'm not sure on that, but I'm kind of thinking that the law allows that to occur.
That's what I've been understanding. So when they say we love you, we're going to take care of you like you're our own kid. We're going to treat you like you're our own, like you came out of my wife's womb. That's what they tell the black parents when they go out to get their kids and bring them all over the country. And then when the NCAA, they went to the Supreme Court to sue to prevent people from making money. Mostly black kids that built the NCAA, Big C, the Power 5. They sued to keep you from making your money. You don't think that's a pig law? You don't think that's a black code? And then the Pac-12 says, Larry Scott says, the health, safety, and well-being of our student athletes, those boys, and all of those connected to the Pac-12 sports has been our number one priority since the start of this current crisis. The Pac-12 Commissioner, Larry Scott, he says our student athletes, fans, and staff And all those who love college sports, Big C, would like to have seen the season played this calendar year as originally planned. And we know how disappointing this is. But they sued the Supreme Court so they couldn't get paid, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they've known since March about this pandemic, and they had enacted no safety measures to protect the athletes. But not until these players ask for 50% of the revenue, because all of a sudden some of these athletes listen to the Big C show, Charlton, and say, hey, we have power. We deserve money. And we want 50% of the revenue. We finally realized that we are the horse that draws the cart in college sports. If we don't play, then they get no revenue. They might say, okay, we can get some butts in the seats and get some ticket revenue, but no network is going to be broadcasting college football games, Charlton, with all white athletes out there. It's just not attractive, and you can call that racist if you want. There's not fans that's going to want to attend a game with all white athletes out there, Charlton. It's just not. They want to see big plays made all over the field. They want to see athleticism displayed out on the field. And so when these black athletes got together and told these major universities, we want to be paid. It started in the MAC conference. They said, we want 20% of the revenue. Think about it. See, the MAC conference is the conference that played all the Tuesday night games for college football.
That's right.
So they knew the contract that they had with the mothership, and that the mothership was paying the conference money and generating a lot of revenue. So we want 20% of that revenue. And the conference said, no, we can't give that to you. Pac-12 said, like, we're a little bigger than that. We got network television as well as all the cable networks, and we have our own cable network. We want 50% of the revenue, because without us, the games don't go on. And all of a sudden, the commissioner said, no, we can't pay you that money. We need that money to make sure that during the basketball tournament, I can get this suite down in Las Vegas for $1,700 a night that I need. So this is the things that players started to listen to, from Big C Sports, John. And now we see the results of it, the end all. And where's the president going to go? This is what I'm saying. He came out today talking about for college football not to play, it's going to hurt his re-election. Because he can't go out and tell people anymore that it doesn't affect young people like it does older people, because the university presidents, I believe most of them are probably in his age bracket. And they're the ones who made the decision. It wasn't the college athletes. It was the university presidents being intelligent enough to know we're going to get sued and we're going to lose more money than we would have made during the college football season.
I've been told by my grandparents, and this is just a fact what they said. They said that white Americans, pejoratively, not every person, but pejoratively, they fear death and losing money. And I think my grandparents are right. That's why when the black codes were out there after the Civil War, and that's when the KKK started, and they would terrorize black families, except for the ones who got smart enough to get a gun. And when you had a shotgun and you armed your family with weapons, a couple of good old boys coming around saying, hey, get him outside. We want him right now. And you hear click, 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 click. Those are shotguns. That's when the people ran away, Big C. But you say, hey, just put the Bible in your hand and ask God to save you. That don't work anymore. I think every black person should get a gun. Protect your family. Pac-12 vote was unanimous. It was made after consultation with athletic directors. And think about this. With the Pac-12 COVID-19, Big C, we've been saying, I tell you, sometime in history repeat itself. The COVID-19 Medical Advisory Committee, who expressed concern with moving forward with contact practices, and athletes will have their scholarships guaranteed while also receiving university support, including academic advising and tutoring, among other support services. The Pac-12 is also urging the NCAA to grant those athletes an additional year of eligibility. We were saying that for the last year. You can't get anything when you're afraid. If you think somebody's going to take away from you because you want liberty and justice for all, you're going to lose your scholarship, boy. They've gotten everything we've asked them to do. But I'm asking black athletes to do one more thing. I'm telling you, even if you don't go to the HBC, maybe there's not enough schools for everybody to go, but you got to get these contracts in writing that you will not work for free. Make the white people work for free. And you know that the white guys are going to work for free? They're all panicking, Big C. They told it was okay. They said it was okay for the athletes. Now that the old white men got to work for free, they're all panicked, but they are capitulating, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I look at this from the coach's perspective, Charlton, is that they didn't want to give up their revenue. We talked a few weeks back, Charlton, about the number of coaches who had chosen not to take a pay cut during the pandemic, as we saw the nation with over 40,000 people on unemployment and struggling to survive, and we had coaches saying, no, I'm not giving back anything.
Nothing.
What's going to be their stance now, Charlton, that there's no season? They're going to have to go in and renegotiate their contract because
really?
The revenue is not going to be there to compensate those coaches. So you're going to see coaches taking a 50, 60, 70% pay cut because there's no season. So you can't pay a guy for what doesn't exist, regardless of whether it's not in his control or not. But it showed the selfishness of these coaches, Charlton, refusing to take a pay cut. They're the highest paid employee in most of the states that they're in.
Yeah.
The highest paid federal employee. And yet they told the people on unemployment, the senators telling other people that $600 is too much for them to get, but they don't mind paying a coach above $6 million, for coaches getting 15 weeks out of a season.
Yeah.
So, I applaud the schools for canceling, Charlton. I'm just waiting on the shoe to drop over the next 48 hours on those other 3 Power 5 conferences to put all this in line. And this is what we talk about. The reason why collegiate sports needs commissioners. You need some individual who can just pull the plug on everything, not going from conference to conference to take a vote, university to university to take a vote. You need somebody like Roger Goodell, like Gary Bettman, like Adam Silver said, no, we're stopping. It's over with, period. They did it when basketball hit COVID-19 last March, Johnson.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they said, okay, we're going to pull the plug on all collegiate sports. But you think about it, they've gone since March to here it is, what we're at, the 10th of August?
The 11th.
The 11th of August, 2020, and they could not make a unilateral decision.
No.
This shows the hypocrisy of the NCAA right now, and this is what parents have to be cognizant of, is that you're sending your kids off into an institution that has no unilateral control, Charlton. They're all flying by the butt of their seat.
Yeah, by the butt of their seat. I saw the movie Coming to America, and Eddie Murphy had it was a joke that Eddie Murphy had, and he said when this woman realized that she had rights, she said, I want half, Eddie, I want half. It's funny how when the black men are, this really is a seminal moment. And I'm telling you, Big C Sports is unlike any other sports show out there, and you can Google it too, because even to this day, we got the first black woman in the history of this country to be, chosen as the vice presidential candidate to run for the president of the United States with Joe Biden. First ever, Big C. And I still saw some people on talk shows today, and all they were saying, do you think LeBron is going to be MVP or will it be Giannis? Do you think that the Lakers can overtake the Clippers? Who's the best team in LA anyway? What about Toronto versus Boston? I'm like, do these guys even read? Is everything just about pleasing that white producer that tells you, don't show people you're intelligent, just shut up and keep talking about sports, as the first black woman in the history of this country has just been nominated to be vice president of the United States? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the big difference between her and the last woman that was nominated, I believe that was Sarah Palin under the late Senator McCain, when he, nominated Sarah Palin to be his vice president running mate when he was running against President Obama.
Yeah.
But he didn't do the proper vetting on Sarah Palin.
No.
And when she got on stage, Charlton, it was a loss because she was in no man's land.
Yeah.
And here it is when we look at Kamala Harris. She was a senator from the state of California as well as the Attorney General.
Attorney General.
The largest economic base in America, California.
Yeah.
Largest population in America, California. So she was, a political power in a small country within itself. She was also ran against Joe Biden, for the presidential nominee.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will use that to say, okay, that there's a risk between them. No,
it's not.
That was a vetting to know that you had a strong person that knew about you and you knew about them. That's the segue to them coming together in this situation. So when you think about the attacks that will come from the Republican side, Charlton, they're going to sit there and try to attack the record of both of these individuals, but they're not going to talk about what they can do for the country from the Republican perspective. They're only going to talk about it as Trump has started. They're going to take your guns. They're going to take your Bibles. They're going to take God and all these things. Because you're unarticulate and unintelligent, these are the things that you go to. You go to the stumbling points that ignite the buffoons of America. Nobody's going to come to your house and take your guns. That's not going to happen. They're not going to come take your Bibles. As a matter of fact, Trump didn't even know which direction to hold the Bible in.
It was upside down.
To take a picture. Matter of fact, he can't even quote a verse from the Bible. He's the only president that has not gone to church basically on an every week or every other week basis. Since he's been in the White House, he spends too much time on his golf course.
Yeah.
So to sit there and talk about somebody's going to take away religion when you can't even spell the word religion, you know, this is how much you lie to people, and the people want to love your lies. Not believe, but love your lies. Yeah. But as we sit here and look at this package that we have now running for the presidency on the Democratic side, y'all, you have people that have been lawmakers, career politicians, that understand the plight of where America needs to go. And to sit there and say people are going to raise your taxes, he's talking to corporate America. Because he lowered the taxes on corporate America, and this is the reason why we're in the situation we are in as a country today. And if people don't want to believe that, just open up your Google sometime on your phone and find out why we're in an economic plight. We've established more debt in this country, and not because of unemployment in the last 4 months, but because of Trump's tax maneuvers against corporate America, Charlton, allowing them to lower the taxes. He's accumulated more debt in 3 years in this country than President Obama accumulated in 8 years. And President Obama inherited a war and a recession.
And you're going to hear, for you guys that just want to argue about is LeBron James going to win the MVP over Giannis, I have nothing to say to you other than, you know, good luck watching that. But you're going to hear in this presidential, this run that we're going to have, Democrat, Republican, Biden versus Trump, he's going to use all the code words about black women. And you black women, if you don't get out and vote, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not even telling you who to vote for. If you want a man that runs around grabbing your daughters by the PUS, blobbity blop blop, then you can vote for that pale white man in office. But if you want someone who's going to defend you, and people say, well, Kamala Harris is tough on crime. Yeah, if you're breaking the law, you're going to deal with the law enforcement. So my mother was tough on crime. She had a gun. She didn't sit around waiting for stuff to happen to her, too. And people act like black Americans don't want
to know about tough on crime. You talked about it earlier in the show. Talk about the pig laws that operate in the Jim Crow states, Charlton, how they oppress black people, how they incarcerate black people unduly for minor crimes, Charlton. And I know people say, well, if they didn't commit a crime, wouldn't be locked up. There's a lot of black people that are incarcerated that did not commit a crime.
That's
they
true.
were accused of it, Charlton, but
falsely
because
accused.
They didn't have the financials to get proper representation. They're spending multiple years locked up in incarceration because of white laws, because of pig laws, because they need free labor in prison, Charlton, cheap free labor in prison, so they lock up black people unduly to get them to work for free. It's the new Jim Crow, Big C. You're going to hear about the N-word. Big C Sports is going to take. You're not going to hear it on other sports shows. They're too big. They're too busy on LeBron James jock and Giannis jock to see who's bigger, stronger, and faster. You're going to hear the N-word in code. You're going to hear racial slurs. You're going to hear about cross burning. You're going to hear about Confederate flags. You're going to hear Jim Crow laws. You're going to hear about police brutality. You're going to hear that bootstrap theory. You're going to hear about housing discrimination. You're going to hear about hiring discrimination. You're going to hear about not having the hate crime laws. You're going to hear more people that talk about we want to be post-racial. You're going to hear all that garbage. You're going to hear about racial profiling. You're going to hear gerrymandering, make America great again, anti-immigration policies. You're going to hear about all that garbage that they've always used since the black codes and the pig laws to scare white people who knew they got the benefit of the doubt when it came to racism and segregation. I just hope that white people are decent enough to give freedom a chance. But if you want the guy that's going to grab your grandkids by the PUS, blobbity blop blop, then you know you keep voting for that same garbage. Big C, our show goes by too fast. I want to bring this up to, I know we can go sports, politics, it's all fair. I just like being real. But I know you love baseball. And as I told you yesterday, I saw that there was an advertisement for baseball. I love baseball too. But I saw J.D. Martinez, Mike Trout, there was Aaron Judge, there's the Verlander, Molina, and Yelich, Big C. And they all were walking across a sign on the ground. It was like painted into the grass by the infield. And it says, "Welcome to the show, Big C." They'd had everything but the thunder. And when I think about that, and I appreciate baseball following black men and saying welcome to the show as opposed to welcome to the ballpark, I appreciate that. But I want to ask you,
what is Rob Manfred going to do? The St. Louis Cardinals, would you believe they've already missed 18 games this year for a disease they're saying is not a big deal? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think he might have to follow the plight of MLS when they sent two teams home right away after having over 10 players test positive in their organization. You think about St. Louis, missing 18, 19 games already, Charlton,
yeah.
and they just canceled a weekend series, so that's 3 more games. So they'll be up to 20 games missed. And we're not even a month into the season, Charlton, an amended season. You only had 60 games to play, and a third of those have been wiped off the schedule already. There's no way that you can compete. You can't keep playing that many doubleheaders, Charlton, in this amended season, saying that we want this team to be in the thick of things.
Yeah.
Baseball has gotten it wrong, and I think that's what football has started to see, is that baseball has gotten it wrong because you can't practice social distancing. When you travel in football, you got to put all those players on one plane, Charlton, in personnel. So you got 100 people on one plane traveling from one city to another.
Yeah.
And it's not right down the street. Sometimes you're flying across country. You're in the plane for 5 hours with these people with limited, air circulation, Charlton, breathing the same air over and over. So as we look at baseball and you haven't been able to practice social distancing because the players in the dugout, they get into scraps, fights, and everything else. They're still spitting and grabbing themselves.
You gotta grab yourself.
Right now, Rob Manfred needs to just be realistic and say, we can't do this. I know he's talking about once they get into the playoffs, about putting teams into a bubble into just a couple cities. But how do you practice that in baseball, Charlton? You're not talking about a dozen guys that you have on each NBA team.
Yeah.
You're talking about 30 players plus personnel.
Yeah. They have this thing called kissing. When you kiss somebody, you really cannot social distance unless you kiss your fingers and throw a kiss sign out. That's how you can play social distance. And I think in somebody's mind that baseball is just it's social distancing because they don't see people kissing or lip locking it. And I'm not being flippant, Big C. They don't see the collisions that you'll see in football. But I want to also I also feel awkward about saying this, but WNBA basketball, I know now it's down in Florida, and DeSantos runs the state of Florida. I know there's the lady that doesn't like the Atlanta Dream, Kelly Loeffler. She's a senator also. And so I think when I read about the pig laws and when I read about black codes, there's a lot of times where white people just lied. Like the Tuskegee Institute, they lied to get their way. History was rife for that. Donald Trump, the birther garbage, he's a liar. And maybe it's part of the culture, I don't know. But they're saying so far there have been no positive tests for COVID-19 since the initial round of testing when the players arrived in Florida at IMG Academy's Big C, even though they were saying that 7 players had tested positive for COVID-19 in the days leading up to Florida. But when they got to Florida where the governor's crooked, then they say, hey, it all went away, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm always curious about who's doing the testing and how often are they testing, y'all. We're not getting it from an independent lab.
No.
We're getting it from the league source. And as long as you want people to participate and make the money that you want them to make, then you're going to have your own independents doing this. And so you're not obligated to put it out, Charlton, in the media outlet what really occurred. You can keep that private because when you think about even the NBA, Charlton, that's all been kept private.
Yeah.
There's no public testing that's done for those players. So we really don't know. We understand that the want and the desire to make the money and at all costs.
Yeah.
So do we get accurate numbers when they talk about testing?
And speaking of accuracy, I want to just make my mind think about something. When Kelly Loeffler said she's part owner of the Atlanta Dream, named Dream after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I Have a Dream, and she says that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group. Now, Kamala Harris, the next vice president of the United States, as long as people vote, we know there's going to be some shenanigans, but when people vote, then Trump's going to get kicked out of office. But what would she say about the vice president? Would she call the vice president, the first black woman of the United States, would she call her a terrorist? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's what they've already started saying. You're going to see him tonight on Fox News with Sean Hannity.
Yeah.
And, he's going to be out there trying to denigrate Kamala Harris. That's what the talk is all going to be about. He's not going to talk about what he's doing for coronavirus, Charlton. He's not going to talk about the plan of recovery for coronavirus. The president is not going to talk about any of the issues in America. He's going to make it all about him. He's not going to talk about the 163,000 Americans that have lost their life from coronavirus. He's not going to talk about the 5 million Americans that have tested positive for coronavirus. He's going to talk about denigrating a vice president nominee.
Yeah.
He's not talking about how he's going to get schools going again, Charlton, how he's going to put in safeguards to protect the children in school, where we already had half the school districts in America closed down. I know the second largest in California is closed down out there in San Diego.
Yeah.
They're going to do virtual learning.
That's good.
So the president won't address any of the pertinent issues that concern everyday Americans right now. He's talking about saving his life 84 days from now. He won't talk about saving lives today from coronavirus.
Yeah, and you want, and I'm asking decent people all over the world, in fact, all over the universe, make sure you get out and vote. But I really want women, and I'm a man, I can't tell any women anything. But I'm imploring women. You talk about the Me Too movement. The only reason we have this clown in the White House is because you turned against Hillary Clinton, because she acted like a man in a sense. That meant she stood up for herself. She didn't put her head between her tail like a lot of women are taught to do, or they're called the B word, Big C. That lady is such a B if they stand up to men. So that's what they call Hillary Clinton. And they're trying to do the same thing to Kamala Harris, all because she stands up for herself. So you're going to hear about this racist behavior, this subtle racism. You're going to hear it. You're going to hear about gerrymandering. You're going to hear about denying white privilege. You're going to hear about a guy that said Mexico's sending their rapists and their murderers. You're going to hear all that garbage. You're going to hear it. The guy who hung out with Jeffrey Epstein, who was molesting young girls, was one of Donald Trump's best friends. And they say birds of a feather flock together. That's how he ended up dead in the prison, Big C. He didn't hang himself. But everybody can look at that the way they want to. I want to just make sure that as people of color, we've seen it in the sports world, stop letting people use you. It's okay to be opposite. It's okay not to be like the average person. Everybody's going to hate you if you succeed. They're going to criticize you if you fail. Don't worry about that. You just got to go forward with what you believe in, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you have to be honest with yourself in what you look at in society. And right now, we're at a pivotal moment in America. You know, this is something that comes around every 50 years. You know, we've had the continuous protests for 74 days since the murder of George Floyd that has drawn this country even closer together against those who were tired of the status quo. And as Trump would say, they want the swamp drained in Washington. They want that snake out of there.
Yep.
And so as we look at society and how it's starting to understand the value of human life, not culture, but of human life.
Human life.
We've had more white people protesting than we've had black people. We've had young people who have cell phones, who have that cellular device in their hand, and they can communicate, Charlton. They're not stuck with the regular news cycle that would have been coming on television 60 years ago, brainwashing you about this is not what you see, but this is the reason why it happened. We don't live in a society like that anymore. And athletes have become more prescient about that themselves. When they're out there making demands on conferences, that shows that we are growing up as a culture that is beyond just the game of sports, that the finances is what's driving it all, and we need to be a part of that. We need to be in the room where it happens.
Yeah, got to be in the room, Big C. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and there's so many others that are out there. Big C, tonight, think about it. The NHL playoffs, NHL. I know they're doing it in old Canada. We love you in Canada. But NHL playoffs is also, they're on thin ice, but they're still on the ice, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, all their playoffs begin tonight, Charlton, at the Rogers Center in Toronto, Canada. So the NHL, the hunt for Lord Stanley Cups begins in earnest tonight. They've got through these early preseason games, as they would call them, the warm-up games. Now the real match is when they drop the puck tonight.
It's when they drop the puck tonight. I want everyone to get out and vote. When you think about universities, they were panicking, Big C, over not being paid the TV money. They're being treated just like they're asking the black college athletes to be treated. So you coaches making between $5 million and $11 million, just forego the money and wear a hat and some some tennis shoes and some hats. Wouldn't you be? That should make you happy. That's what you ask the black athletes. And I'm so proud of black men. I really am. We're on this pipeline from school to prison because a lot of white school teachers They'd rather report a young black kid's behavior to the police as opposed to a counselor. They don't send white kids to prison. They get them counseling, Big C. And all of this talk that my mother told me when she grew up in Jim Crow, she had the colored drinking fountains, white drinking fountains. She had colored restrooms, white restrooms. That was not humane. No white woman has ever had to go through that garbage, and you know it's true. Here's your chance to not be racist. Don't close your door and say, they're so angry because they're telling people to read. They often thought that slaves were angry, or if they thought they were terrorism. They were terrorists when they thought that they should read. Well, you got to read. You got to read and you got to vote. But I really hope, and I'll throw it to you before we close, I really hope and I pray that my mother told me the truth, and I know she did. She said, baby, you got to treat people the way you want to be treated. I want every white American to Google the pig laws and Google the black codes and ask yourself if you wanted yourself, your grandparents, or your own children to be treated that way, and don't be racist against this black woman, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's one of the things I've always spoke to you about on the show. I said white people got to treat black people like people, and that's all what it's all about. It's not about what the Constitution said. That is a piece of paper. Everybody can't read. Everyone's not intelligent, articulate. But you have to treat people like you want to be treated, not because of the complexion of their skin, not because of the content of their character, but because they are people.
Are people.
You have to judge a person as a person. And as long as you want to live under that rule that one is better than the other, Charlton, we will never gain equality in this country. And hopefully we crossed another line in the sand today, Charlton, with Kamala Harris being nominated as the vice president running mate of Joe Biden. And if we can get both of these people into the White House, Charlton, then the cycle has been turned, Charlton, because we will end up with another black president eventually.
Amen to that. And you guys, just treat people the way you want to be treated every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. You can follow Big C Sports, and I really appreciate saying that. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Donald Trump stated today that if college football is not played, it hurts his election chances. Well, the Florida governor today, Ron DeSantis, after he heard that from the president, went out and bought a bag of breast mint. Got up behind the president and said they can play college football down in the state of Florida, even though it's the epicenter right now for coronavirus. I want to thank the frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, first responders. Stay safe, stay strong. Only if the president had the intelligence that you have, we would be a better country.
Amen to that. Get out and vote every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to deal with that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.